Hi, I'm Hank Davis from channelhank.com, here with 5 time-saving podcast editing tips. Number 1, peaking the mic in order to mark places that you need to come in and edit at. A lot of people talk about leaving long pauses, and I used to do that myself, but I don't want to sit there and wait for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or enough time to pass to where it is very noticeable in my WAV file. So instead of doing that, I simply snap my fingers, it clips the microphone, and I get these super duper large spikes wherever I snap. And then that signifies to me that I go in and do my edits at those points. Number 2 is the tried and true long pause removal. So I'm going to do it in 3 different pieces of software. In Audacity, you're going to go to Effect, and then come down to truncate silence. I'm just leaving it wherever it was set at. So it looks like it's set to fine silence. That's a half a second or longer. And then it will truncate to a half a second. So I will click OK. And that file is greatly reduced, as you see there. In Wavepad, I will pull up that file, that same file. I will go to Edit. Then I'm going to come down to Trim Silences. And again, it's set to a half second, and whatever it was set at, I'm just going to use that. You can play around with the settings at your leisure. So we're going to click OK, and there we go. We reduced all the long pauses to a half a second. And then in Adobe Audition, we're going to come up here to Effects, and then we're going to go to Diagnostics, Delete Silence Process. And that's going to bring up a screen where we're going to scan the file to bring it in. And it shows us all the problems, but some of them aren't even actually problems if we're going to a half a second. So you have to keep that in mind. And then also where it says fix by deleting silence, you can hit that arrow and you can just say shortening silence. And let's do 500 milliseconds for that. And then we could scan it again like it is asking us to, but it still brings up those ones that aren't technically what we're after. And you could fix that by messing with the settings of defining silence itself. So once you've got that all ironed out, you just hit delete all. And that file has been reduced greatly as well. I don't know what's more disturbing, that all 3 programs output a slightly different length file or what. But let's move on to number 3. And number 3 is Hotkeys. We're already in Adobe Audition, so let's go to Edit. And then we can go to Keyboard Shortcuts. And on here, we have the type of stuff that we will use on a regular basis. And we could come in here and pick something and assign it a key on the keyboard or a combination of keys. And it's going to tell you if that combination is already taken. So if you tried to change the multi-band compressor to Control-Shift-P, it would say it was already taken. But you come in here and I just caution people, make sure it's stuff that you're not going to use on another program that will cause confusion. And then if we switch over to Wavepad, we could go to Tools and then Options. And under Options, we have a little tab called Keys. And then we could come in here and we could change anything that we want to. We have various ones set up, and then we could switch them around. And then in Audacity, we're going to go to Edit. And we're going to come down to Preferences, Keyboard. And then you can see they have stuff that's already set up, and you can switch them around to what you want them to be, or you could write them down on a piece of paper until you learn them and stick with what they already have set up. It's up to you, but that saves time. Number 4 is going to be editing by sight. So on a audio file, you'll get the cadence of your co-host or your guest or even yourself. And I just brought this in for argument's sakes. These are all breaths, these little teardrops. And once you learn what they are and what they look like specifically, you can just power through and you could delete each one of them. There's higher end pieces of software that have really cool tactics for getting rid of breaths, but this is just for an example. It could be any type of item, an or a stall word or phrase that people use. It could be anything. As long as you know what it looks like, you can just come through and cut them out of there. And number 5 is going to sound like the simplest thing, but it's really not. And it is pacing yourself while editing. When we're jogging, biking, doing numerous things, we set time limits on ourselves and we have a certain pace that we try to keep up with. But for some reason with audio editing, you'll see people just go crazy and they'll spend 5 hours on a 1 hour audio file. And for me, it helped me and changed everything for me when I said to myself, I'm going to do 2 minutes of editing for every 1 minute of audio, period. And it helps me stay on pace. And then I leave some of the silly small stuff and just keep moving. And I'm not suggesting that you leave anything out or anything like that. I'm just saying you want to set a pace, or else if you have no pace, then you will just have no direction when you're editing. And I even will do something like this show I can only do 20 edits on. And it helps me choose what I think is most important. But pace yourself while you're editing your podcast, or else you could just lose your entire day to the editing process. So to recap, you can peak the mic by simply snapping your fingers. You can remove long pauses, and I showed you how to do that in 3 different pieces of software. You can set your hotkeys on your keyboard. It will help you speed up editing time. You can edit by sight if you know what you're looking for. And then you can pace yourself. Did you like these tips? Would you like more? Check out my audio editing training course called Podcast Audio Editing Ninja. And if you buy it today, you'll get over 2 hours of audio podcast production information for just $7.77, which is a fraction of the regular price. It's a product that's focused on the principles of audio production and not on a particular piece of software. In it, you'll get my perspective on equipment ideas, pre-recording and recording suggestions, tools and tactics to help you avoid injury, eradicating plosives, those annoying P-pops, and fricatives, which are the deep K sounds, and I'll show you how to manually remove clicks and pops that are embedded in your words. Plus, I'll share my personal workflow, talk about the podcast loudness standard. I'll give you my thoughts on using EQ, compression, and bass on your voice. I'll touch on loudness versus perceived loudness and how that can impact your audio podcast. So if you're interested in saving time editing while only spending a few bucks on over 2 hours worth of training videos that are software agnostic, I want you to click the link below and it will take you to Podcast Audio Editing Ninja. This is a limited time offer.